You're listening to Neuma, the Crossroad of Science and Enlightenment. This podcast is a place where science meets soul and healing meets hope, where the latest in science meets ancient wisdom to illuminate the path toward healing and transformation. We break through stigma and misinformation to explore the transformative power of psychedelic therapy, holistic health, and the mind-body connection. Through stories, insight, and expert conversations, we provide practical solutions to help you reclaim your mental health, embrace your spirituality, and achieve true enlightenment. Hosted by Alan Wiederhold, author of the book Walking in the Garden, Discovering God Through Psychedelics. Alan is the consummate explorer, passionate about empowering others to embrace the divinity of their true selves, as well as the founder of Neuma Health, whose mission is to restore and transform lives. Here's your host, Alan Wiederhold.
What if the battle never ended when we came home? What if the hardest mission isn't out there? It's here, inside of all of us. Today, I am really honored that with a fellow warrior, a Navy SEAL, Diego Ugalde, the founder of the Warrior Side Project. We're talking about the silent war that veterans face every day. PTSD, disconnection, learning how to tell the truth of our stories finally, and in some ways being able to say welcome home. Sit with, as somebody who's really walked this path over the last couple of years, I can tell you, I know how heavy silence can get. This episode is about breaking through, reclaiming our voice, and being able to overcome. Please join me on the show, Diego Ugalde. Diego, welcome. I am so excited that you're here.
Thank you, Alan. What's up? It's good to be here.
We were briefly talking beforehand about how we got here. Like, how do we get into the ring? So, brother, like, how did all this happen? Like, give me a little bit of your story, and let's go there.
Okay. A little bit being the key point.
Let's go a lot of it. We can do a lot of it. So
we don't have enough time, bro.
I'm good. I'm a great talker, and yeah, we can split this in two if we have to.
Yeah. So it takes most people about 2 years to make it through SEAL training. It took me 10. A bunch of self-sabotage going on, broken things, dislocated things, failing tests, all the things that I finally made it. And, you know, the whole idea of my understanding of fulfillment was nowhere in sight. So I kept on kind of trudging along and did all the things that I felt like I was supposed to do as a SEAL. I was still standing around this whole idea of being disconnected with the idea of fulfillment. And that even went to when I retired after 20 years of service. And then it wasn't until I was introduced into the notion of being presently aware of within that I really, because I don't even think I knew what fulfillment was. I've had touch points with it, but certainly back then, before this whole idea of mindfulness, I had no idea it was about house on the beach and all the things, which wouldn't be bad, by the way.
Well, you know, that's the crazy thing about fulfillment, though, is that even when you have those things, you don't appreciate them.
Yeah,
because you just keep moving the goalposts.
It's
and I remember you and I kind of briefly talked before the show. I had Matt Zeman is somebody that most of us know, and he was so gracious with his time, and we talked about this, that in the corporate world, or in our case, military, I feel like it was, I'm not going to say somewhat easier than civilian life, because you always knew the line where time in service, you always knew that you had a rate exam that you were going to be taking. You knew there was a point system. You kind of knew that. But you are on a whole other level, because as a SEAL, you have this 10 years of, like, you're trying to get to a place. And I feel like for most of us, we're just trying to survive. And I remember being in for 12 years. And getting out, I swore I made a mistake because I didn't know where the line was. I didn't know where that fulfillment was. And I remember I was telling somebody yesterday, I was sitting outside of my car. I had just gotten out of the 12-year Navy. I'm sitting in my parents' house. I'm crying because I swore I made the biggest mistake of my life. I was like, I got to get back in. I know where the line is. But yeah, but nobody ever teaches fulfillment. No one ever teaches us how to be content with what we have and what we are.
Not in our culture, because it's not common to really deeply understand fulfillment in the Western culture. There are millions of people who totally get it. It's just not in the circles around the people who teach us, or most of our parents don't really understand fulfillment. And I know that's a big general sweeping statement. It just seems to be true in my experience. And most people I talk to don't have any real connection with the real idea of what it is to be in this state of fulfillment. And so how could they teach us when they don't know? They're trying to do the best they can. Everyone's trying to do their best they can. I don't think any one of our teachers or parents are leading us astray intentionally for the most part. How could they know?
Yeah, I have an 8 and 10-year-old, and I talk to my kids about this kind of stuff all the time. And we have these perceptions, good and bad. There really is no such thing in the way that we kind of think it is. I think we make these judgments based on these stories. That's what I tell my kids. Like, every story that I tell you comes from a place of my neighborhood, my church, my government, my parents, my school, my culture. So those collective experiences really are what shape our mindset, so to speak. And you're right. I mean, we never think about like our parents and the stories that they were told, which are in fact what we are told. I mean, it just kind of rolls downhill
until the line is broken, that the idea that we don't have a choice, because we do. We are the ones who break that line, and because the us or the I that is really, really me, has all the opportunity to immediately cease and desist all things that I choose not to do anymore, and immediately shift over into embodying all the things that I would prefer to be doing. I have this ability, and so it's things that you're doing with you were taught this, and then you decided, I'm not teaching my kids this. I'm not doing this. And even them, they're going to have to go through their own process of filtering out what they choose to take, what they choose to believe, what they choose to learn the hard way, and what they choose to just be in flow state with. And that becomes their journey. And that's not a little statement. I mean, that's the thing. The journey is the thing, as far as I'm aware. So it doesn't matter how much far you've come on your journey, they have their own to do. And that includes getting banged up and twisted and all the things so that they can untwist and clean up and disinfect and do all the things so that they know for themselves, rather than, my dad has always said that this is fulfillment, and so I am fulfilled. It's like, no.
And right. Yeah, until you've experienced and gotten back up yourself. Yeah, I have a group of guys that I'm in a Bible study with. I've never been in one with guys before, and it's been kind of an interesting thing. And they all kind of send around prayer requests. And right now, it's, for a lot of people, there's a lot of with politics. There was an email kind of going around, something to the effect of they were worried about NIH and cuts and things like this. And they were like, there was a lot of scarcity and a lot of fear in these emails. And I responded back and I said, let's maybe reframe that. Things aren't happening to you, they happen for you. We all hear the expression iron sharpens iron, but until you really experience that, have that decision, what we're talking about with kids, like, they have to sharpen themselves. I can't do it for them. But how did you learn this? Like, I mean, again, we're not taught this.
Yeah, I learned this through what I sometimes playfully, and then at the same time 100% not playfully, referred to as a cosmic beating. I learned, and this isn't the way to learn. I learned through suffering. You don't love that statement from Eckhart Tolle. He says suffering is necessary only until it no longer is. But for me in my path, it appears that suffering was real necessary in order for me to come to understand certain things. And it wasn't all suffering. There was some realizations that were given, some where I recognized through like elevated states of consciousness, bringing my awareness sort of beyond my thinking mind. Not sort of, absolutely beyond my thinking mind, where I was able to connect with a broader awareness of things and just observing and not labeling or judging or trying to understand things that are understandable. But it was in those places where I discovered a sense that everything I thought about who I am was incomplete and nowhere near the whole story. In fact, in some cases, so microscopic that it's even completely diversionary of really who I am. And then coming into that place and experiencing more of what and who I actually am. Okay. And then, it's not enough to simply be aware of the answers to the test. It's almost like if somebody went into medical school and they gave them all the answers for the tests every week and they passed every test and they show up to the hospital the first day, they're not going to know anything. They're going to be totally lost and people are going to, how'd you get here? So, life can have this really beautiful way of saying, okay, now that we've shown you, bombs just started getting dropped everywhere. And then I had to come to learn on my own in that respect, how to bring up to balance from my logical awareness that they gave me to my state of being actually coming into alignment of the things that they gave me the answers to. And that was hard. It was really hard because I had to let go a lot of things. I didn't even know how to let go. Not really. I had to learn things that were incomprehensible to me only a short moment before all those things really hard, physically painful sometimes. And honestly, in my case, it was the most afraid I've ever been in my life in some of those moments of really, really coming deeply face to face with everything that I had been creating to get in my way.
Mm. I can totally see that because I know for me, I talk a lot about this on my show. I'm very open about being sexually abused child and never talking about it and having to face that, but revisiting that in my first psychedelic experience. Actually sitting on the steps, I record my transcripts and the 5-year-old fear as an adult and saying, please, no, I don't want to go to the room. Please don't make me go to the room. And then I'm in the room. Then I'm in the room again. Third time, I'm actually power. He's crying, telling me that it was done to him. So I was able to actually frame the hardest part of me, but I was immediately a 5-year-old child. Like in my recording, I sound like a 5-year-old child. So I understand it.
Yeah. And not everybody's ready for that. And so that's why I'm like, psychedelics are not for everybody. There's just no way around it, to my awareness, that to experience, we were talking about fulfillment, to experience genuine peace, real peace, to experience genuine power and simply being in the state of being, one has to come face to face with those things that happen in their life and come to deep and honest resolution with them. And that doesn't happen through avoiding. That doesn't happen through surrendering, just triggers. I got to stay away. I got to turn away. That can't happen. It has to be through it. And, who the hell wants to do that? But in the end, if you're just sick and tired of this thing just hanging and taking up real estate and all the stuff, and finally tired of it, I don't have all the answers, but as far as I know, that is the way.
Yeah. I read a book by Brandon Dawson, entrepreneur. It's called The 9-Figure Mindset. And one of the things I love about what Brandon says, it could be on anything, and it's exactly what you're describing. In order to get out of this place that you're stuck, first have to accept that you're stuck. Then you have to acknowledge why you're stuck. And I feel like that's like what you're saying right there, is that for us to be able to acknowledge it, that's the hard part. But then you turn to the direction that you want to go. And I think that goes back to your fulfillment and your intention, because most of us don't. Like, we're stuck in this is where we are. We don't want to think beyond this. Very paralyzing. And then you accelerate once you're able to actually that direction. Right. It's just the acknowledgement and the acceptance that we have a hard time with.
Yes. And on top of that, I would add, because it's so easy to acknowledge illusion. Well, this is why. Mm-hmm. When it's coming from the thinking mind of course I know my situation. Of course I know. And the attachment to the idea of knowing. And all that does is happily take you down another road of illusion until you learn, if ever you learn, that maybe what you think you know isn't what happened, which I'm not trying to deny anybody's experience, but the mind is so powerful that it is happy to create everything. I'm not saying these things didn't happen, but it's happy to create little nuances that keep one from experiencing the full brunt of what happened, or it keeps them from acknowledging that maybe this part didn't happen. And that's not because they're crazy or anything. It's just what the mind does. You're capable of smelling things other people can't smell. You're capable of hearing and seeing and experiencing things that no one else experiences. That it works. So coming to awareness of what is, I think, can be a different end state from knowing what all this stuff is. I spend a lot of time in coaching. Well, I'll say something and it'll resonate with somebody in a certain way. And I'll go, okay, that's something I'm going to have to figure out. I'm like, no, don't figure it out. Do not use the mind to figure this out, because it's not what the mind is capable of doing. It's the thinking mind cannot understand this, can't know these things, because they're really quickly. The thinking mind is a three-dimensional tool. And it's an unbelievable, the miracle tool of all tools in this three-dimensional world. And it doesn't have the same applications in a multi-dimensional state of existence that we are all living in, whether you believe quantum physics or not. It just is as it is. So using the thinking mind to navigate through these multi-dimensional states, the mind will be happy to do it. It'll do whatever you tell it to do. But that doesn't mean you're any closer to truth than you were before. At all.
Yeah, truth is one of those. Truth is a funny word, because we always used to say the truth will set you free. Not the truth, because we all have our own versions of it. It's the facts. The facts will set you free, and the facts are the facts. But even that can be navigated. And I love that you're talking about the quantum physics and the quantum field, because string theorists have now believed that we have 11 dimensions. So
all the way up to 33. Some of them, it's between 11 and 33. Yeah. So I hear what you're saying about truth, and what helps me put things into clearer perspective is the idea that the definition of truth can be, into my awareness, is what is true is always true. Like there is no your truth and there is no my truth. It either did
absolute
or
truth.
It didn't happen. It either is or it is not. Literally everything else is perspective, prejudice, bias, misinformation, or lying for fear, like all the things. It's something else, but it isn't truth. And where I think all that comes from is because in our culture, we're taught that knowledge is power. So if you know, then you're powerful and you have value to the tribe. But if you don't know anything, then you don't have any value to the tribe. And so you'll be somehow excommunicated. And so there's a subconscious fear that people have with being exiled, which exile from the tribe literally equates to death. People are wrestling with this whole idea of knowing as if they're subconsciously, as if their life depends on it. And of course, why wouldn't you be in an argument with somebody who is going to argue until the cows come home about something? Because subconsciously, they're like, I have value, damn it, as a human being, and of course, one thing has nothing to do with the other, but they're fighting for their life to establish that they belong here. And if we could come to understand that the whole idea of knowing is like truth, in my opinion, where we don't really know what knowing is. And if we understood what knowing was, we could completely absolve ourselves from really having to deeply know anything. I know that we call these glasses, and then I know that we usually use them to see things better, typically speaking. But beyond that, and like the alphabet and some other man-made thing, what do I really, really know? Is nothing. And so people are holding on to this illusion of knowing, and it's like a buoy in the middle of the ocean, but it's not anchored to anything. And they're floating around anyway to this, I know. It's like, you don't know. Like, you don't even know the world is round for most people. Not really. And I'm not saying that the world is flat, because what I am saying is I don't know. And somebody could say, my dad knows. My dad was in the Air Force. He said, the reason why I know the Earth is round is because I got on a plane from California and I kept flying east until we made it back to California. That's how I know it's Earth. And I'm like, even that is something my dad told. Do I trust him? Yes, I do. Do I believe him? Yes, I do. But the word is believe, which is a far cry away from knowing. I'm not here to argue. I'm not arguing one way or the other.
It's interesting because I know, so I went to flight school. I was a pilot and learning how to circumnavigate is interesting because you have to learn how to do bearing. Well, even in the Navy and even with stuff on the teams, you're always navigating based on bearing.
Totally. So you have a knowing that there are people who castrate somebody on social media. What do you mean the Earth is flat, you idiot? It's like, bro, you don't know either.
Well, so I had a guest on last week. We were talking about that because I watched a video with Nancy Grace. Do you remember Nancy Grace? She was on Fox News.
Yeah. Blonde.
Very loud mouth. Like
she's our attorney, right?
She's the attorney. And I remember her ripping Rick Doble into shreds about MDMA. And just like, you don't know. He had all the scientific research. And she was telling him all these things that weren't true, that even now, we're 20 years later, and I said this in my podcast last week, I've never heard an apology. Like, I've never heard anyone come back and say, yeah, man, we're right. I was wrong. Who knew I didn't know? No one ever comes back and acknowledges that. We just got to move on. And I think that's a perfect example. Like here, she's taking sound bites of what we've been told, and she just ran with it and just like crucified him.
Crucifying because of the fear of this conflict with what she thinks she knows, which goes back to this whole, I belong here. You know why I belong here? Because I know way more than you do. And it's in that way you can see the suffering. And I'm sure years ago I would have wanted to castrate her back, but now it's just like, I wish I could put her on my lap and just be like, oh, dude, it's so okay.
And I watched him. He was so beautifully graceful. He was so graceful.
Yeah, he's had stuff figured out for a long time, that dude.
He's such an amazing guy. So we got out of the Navy.
Yeah.
How did Warrior Side come to be? You and I connected a couple weeks ago just because I saw it. I love presenting, being somebody who's been in marketing for most of my career. I love standing on a stage and telling my story, but you're teaching veterans like us how to tell their story. How did that come to be?
I had a keynote in Las Vegas, and what I thought was just dropping some huge bombs that everyone would be just like on the edge of their seat wanting to listen to. And some people had their cell phones out. They were just completely could care less. And I'm just like, what is going on? Like, how could this be? Because what I'm talking about is huge. And it was huge. It just didn't make any sense to me. So then I went home. Then I had another keynote to give in Alaska. It was a separate one. So I built a new talk. And then somebody called me and said, hey, how's the keynote going? I'm like, I don't know. It's going pretty good. But I thought the one in Vegas was awesome too. But it just didn't land very well. And so she says, so tell me your story. And I told her, and she's like, it's an amazing story. Just change up the order and you'll see. So I went to Alaska. I changed up the order of the story that I told. And for the first, everyone was crying. Not everybody. A lot of people were crying. Everyone was laughing. And I got my first standing ovation walking off the stage after doing keynotes for like 7 years. And all because of something we call a story arc and just learning more about it. I actually had somebody that I coach fly out to Alaska to see the talk. And as a way to say thank you, I took him out to dinner, but I really wanted to talk to him because a few months before that, he sent me a text and he said, dude, I'm being hunted. And there was a picture of a bear in the wilderness. And I never knew what happened. I asked him, what happened? Did you live? Like, are you still alive? What happened? And I never heard from him again, but he flew out to Alaska. So tell me everything. And so he takes me through this unbelievable story about him against this bear, hunter against hunter. And he didn't know if he was going to live or not, genuinely. And he was by himself. There was no one. He was in the middle of no one was coming to get him. It was just him and the bear and his, shotgun, or his rifle. But anyway, the whole time he's telling me this story, I'm on the edge of my seat and I just listening to every word he has to say. And it just came to me when I listen to people these days, I listen less and less with my mind, and I just completely, entirely listen to them. We were talking about being in that state of awareness. So I'm in this state of awareness as I'm listening to him. And as I'm listening to him, I simultaneously get this very, 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 very clear message. Warrior side, everyone needs to hear these stories. And then I even in that same sentence, I even got the House of Blues, San Diego. After I listened to him, I said, that's insane. I can't believe you lived. I'm glad you lived. And oh, by the way, just because of your story, I'm starting a company. And he's like, what are you talking about? Because I have never met a veteran that doesn't have 20 stories in their pocket that would just blow most people away. Like they can't, like, what? You did what on an aircraft carrier? You did what in, Tahiti, or like, how did you end up there? Like loads of these stories. And so we started to build this thing. And because of my background in coaching and helping veterans, sit in these profoundly dark places that you and I were talking about earlier, it also came to me that I got to be damn careful about the stories that they're telling, because a lot of these people have incredible stories of bravery and sacrifice and all this stuff. But every time they tell the story, it's like drinking a teaspoon of poison. It hurts them to tell the story every time they do. And sometimes they get to the point of, I can't tell this story one more time. And so when I hear that, I understand immediately that whatever story that they're telling is out of alignment with what is. Because if it was fully in alignment with what is, that story would be empowering for them to say. It would be healing for them to say. It would be giving them energy and light and love to say the story a million times. These stories that people go through are the reason why people transcend at all. So it's not just about telling the story. It's being very, very careful with listening to the subtle words that might exist within the sentences that could actually be continuing to harm them, which I don't want any part of. And so it's the opposite of fake it till you make it. It's about looking at a certain situation in alignment with the best of what we understand to be true and seeing it from that perspective and telling the truth from that pathway. It's true. It's authentic. It really, really happened. And it's not giving themselves like these little twists of shame and anger and regret and resentment and all the things. And so we've done that. We built a curriculum around conscious storytelling so that the stories that they tell are not only healing for them, and not only do they help them connect with the community around them, but the dissection process of the story itself actually helps them to learn deeper aspects and connect with deeper elements within themselves, which is everything. To my awareness, the most powerful medicine there is connection. It's more powerful than psychedelics, more powerful than therapy, more powerful than all the drugs they want to push down. It's connection. And so what are we connecting with? Are we connecting with ego? Are we connecting with shame and anger and judgment and all the stuff? Or are we connecting with the you? That is you. That is really, really you. Because if you connect with that, you're connected to all things. There is no issues after that, in a way. Of course, there are issues, but it's easier to navigate when you're navigating from that space.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Neuma, the Crossroad of Science and Enlightenment. We hope you're enjoying the deep dive into psychedelics, neuroplasticity, and the path to transformation. Before we continue, let's discuss recovery. After powerful experiences, your mind deserves more than just rest. It needs real support. That's where Neuma Hydrate comes in. Formulated with GABA, taurine, inositol, magnesium, and more, Neuma Hydrate is designed to help your brain recover faster and support neuroplasticity, giving you the clarity and the energy to fully embrace your journey. Fuel your recovery and elevate your mind with Neuma Hydrate. Check out neuma.health to learn more. Now, enjoy the rest of the episode. Yeah, because I feel like once you're in that space, you're able to reflect, accept, acknowledge without saying judgment. And I think that's the hardest thing, is to get to that.
Yes. So that's where Warrior Side came from. We just had our first cohort 3 weekends ago. Yeah, it's one of those things when they come from real clear, what I would call divine guidance. There was no worries. There was no second guessing. There was no troubled thinking of, oh, I wonder. There's none of that. It was, this is as it is. I know where this is coming. Like, this is coming from my soul and not my, I got an idea. Why don't I start a multi-million? There's none of that. None of that. This was purely from the heart. And the program went amazing. Everyone's stories started at a certain place, wherever they were. They're all they're continuing to transform because they're still going through training. And yeah, it's going to, in a way, culminate on March 29th at the House of Blues in San Diego. We're going to get on stage and just get after it. And it's going to be cool.
So I've heard from a couple of people the cohort was amazing. It looked amazing. It was just incredible what I've actually heard. So kind of walk me through, like, what does the cohort look like? Because this is continuing. And then what is the training? What does that entail? So it's a couple of days, correct? Like they come in on a Friday, and then we have 3 days where we're really learning to tell our story.
Yes. So it's open to veterans and first responders at no cost to them. We're still trying to figure out the fundraising part. So if you're listening and you don't know. I was going to
say, so listeners, as we are talking about this, there will be a push for fundraising.
Yeah, 100%. So I don't choose to do anything small. I've learned how to start small with being an entrepreneur, but we go big. We start small where it's important. We go big in other places. So when they apply, first assignment before they show up is to share their most authentic, vulnerable, transformational, lived experience of their life. And you have to tell it in less than 10 minutes. And so that's really, even that alone is really good training, because where you could tell these stories for 5 hours, there's a lot to what we're asking. And then to transcribe them so you can see in words how many times the filler words come in and all the things. And then they show up, and then we start Friday night with asking the question, who are you? Like, who are you beyond the thinking mind? And foremost, what are you talking about, dude? What do you mean beyond the thinking mind? And so we try to do our best to bring people from where we are, generally speaking, as a culture, in our understanding of who we are, to just the possibility of what more we might be, maybe. And we do it hopefully by giving real life examples that everyone can relate to. And, oh yeah, I know that. I've experienced that. If I was who I thought I was, then that couldn't be true. And so we're trying to gently and lovingly get them to a place of just asking the question, maybe I'm not who I've always thought that I was. And that can be bloody scary for many people. And it's okay, because at the end of the day, everyone is in sovereign control of where they go or where they don't go with this program. You don't have to completely let go and go through the program if you choose not to. You don't have to. But there will be some corrective sort of guidance that we'll give regardless, to make sure that you can tell whatever story you want when you get out of here. But while you're here, this whole thing of I am this or I am that, or does not allow it. We protect the energy here.
It's so interesting too, because I'm thinking of Alan Watt. One of my favorite Alan Watts quotes is, "Are you a noun or a verb?" And I ask my kids this all the time, like before bed, because we have this tendency to think we're nouns. Mm-hmm. We have this tendency to rely on the stories of the experiences we already talked about. I had this conversation before bed last night, and they're like, "We're verbs." They're like, "Tell me again why we're a verb." So, and I'm already trying to challenge my kids. And what people don't even realize, what's so beautiful about that, just in our own lives, we get new skin cell every 7 years. So body's completely new. So whoever you were 7 years ago, from a skin cellular level, completely different. Like, we're verbing. We're always verbing. It's so cool. And if you can realize that we're verbing, that's where like healing and liberation come.
Yeah. And to your point, that's just the skin. Your conscious awareness changes literally from moment to moment. So right there, that was like 50,000 conscious awarenesses. So we're under no obligation to be who we thought we were 5 minutes ago. It's literally meaningless. It's the now. And that can be very, very helpful in shedding all kinds of things. It's there, it exists, but you're under no, authority that well, this is just the way things are until and if you decide to change your energetic resonance.
You had mentioned something that I don't know if you have ever heard of Byron Katie. She's an author, and she has this process called the work. Mm-hmm. And it's exactly what you're describing, because past stories create future narrative that really interfere with the now. Like we always we tell ourselves these future events that will never occur the way that they think they will, but they become self-limiting in the now just based on past.
They can. Yeah, and your past stories don't have to dictate anything whatsoever. Not a thing. They don't have to. And it's not faking it till you make it. It's acknowledging what was and deeply experiencing what is, which immediately makes whatever happened in the past, what you might label good or bad, as not necessarily irrelevant, but has no impact on what is right now. So that's hard to understand. And those words don't mean a whole heck of a lot to people who don't have deep alignment and understanding with what those words are. Totally get it. And so we have to allow, and I say we, I mean warrior side and coaches or therapists or whatever, have to allow for that process to be as it is. We're simply planting seeds, and ultimately they're going to have to be the ones to actually physically plant them and then water and tend to them if they want them to grow or not. So that's kind of the first night of warrior side. And then when we're done with that class, then their next work after that is to go through their story and recognize all the places where they may have aligned with illusion or untruth or something, and just notice it. And even that is a big one where they spend hours doing that. And okay, I'm done. Well, how about this? Because it's so subtle and our language is so twisted that it's very easy to do that in our language, because our language is a three-dimensional tool. Then the next day we go over what we call the 7 points of performance for storytelling. Everything from looking at the world through storyteller eyes to getting a second sight picture on your story after you've presented it to the world in some way, and continuing to go on just like life, making adjustments after that and getting better and all those things, getting more skilled maybe in some ways. And then once we go through the 7 points of performance, then they got to take their stories again and then apply everything that they learned. And so there's hours of tweaking there. And then the next day, we go over stage presence, everything from eye contact to deliberate body movement and how you enunciate your words, all of those things. And then they go through their story as they're telling it, just being aware of what their hands are doing, just being aware of where their conscious awareness is. It's very, very easy to get lost in the midst of story with all this energy and being on stage to just check out. Like if you've ever gotten on stage to tell a story, you get back off, you don't even know what you said and people are clapping and stuff. It's completely normal. And you have the opportunity to, just like meditation, I'm not here right now. Let me come back here. And even if you have to do that 30 times during your talk, you're still way more present than you would have otherwise been. And being present while you're telling your story just allows for this radiant energy to go out more and connect more, which is what we're doing here, is we are connecting. And you can obviously connect more deeply to this self when you are in a state of being here. And then from there, we have weekly video check-ins. All that stuff is in person so that they can create this connection together. But these stories really, and we're not there to just give us a story and we'll teach you how to build this story. The whole idea is hopefully when they get done with their class, they know how to tell stories, period. So it's not just for this one. And I would love for this to be 5 days a week for 10 months.
Right.
Nobody's getting paid and everyone's got stuff to do. So we can't do that.
And it's almost like, to me, you're almost going beyond storytelling. It's communication skills. I mean, you really are, while you're doing it on a state, you are, because I know I have a friend who teaches very similar, and I used to bring him into my companies, and I would have him train all of my sales team, because you do get lost in the nervousness at times. Then you start using filler words that are distracting, or you tune out and you start rambling, or even the inflections and the pitches of your voice. As you're talking about that, I'm thinking of, he's like, okay, are we rolling like Virginia, or are we flat like Iowa? And then we would have exercises where, in a boardroom at least, you're looking at one person, one thought, other person, because we have a tendency to look at one person. And that person, and if that one person is like, either I'm uncomfortable because Diego's staring at me the whole time, or you don't know who really you're connecting with because you're not really making eye contact. So you really are. So I love that you're doing this, because it is teaching communications.
Yes, it's interesting. I can sit with the whole idea of the separateness between storytelling and communication, which I hadn't before you mentioned that. So that's good to think about. I was definitely I'm recognizing now that I was lumping the two in together. Like, you can't have story without communication, but that's not true at all. Oh. You can tell all kinds of stories about being an effective communicator, and that's part of what it's exactly what you're saying. So thank you for helping me see through a different lens.
Well, I notice it at parties too, because when I'm engaged in a conversation, because I've been through so many of these things, and when I started, I was so afraid of public speaking. I remember in high school and in college, I would take the F. Like, if I had to go up and present in front of a classroom, there was no way on earth. I just didn't have that confidence. Yeah. I had all this baggage of stuff that was worth conversation I was talking about earlier. There was just no way I would do it. And now to be able to stand on a stage and speak in front of thousands of people, I don't think anything about it, but there's a lot of training that is involved in that. But I also feel like when I hear people at parties with a lot of the filler words or the ums or the eye contact, it really kind of resonates, because you take a lot of the same things that you learned and you translate those into everyday life.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So then we have the month long of weekly check-ins virtually as people are carrying on with their lives. And some people don't want to go on stage. They just want to learn the skill. And that's cool, of course. But some people do. And so we're having a big giant event here at the end of the month in San Diego at the House of Blues, where they're getting up and on stage and they're telling these stories that they have freshly crafted through the lens of Warrior Side. And so we're very excited about that. And there's a ton of energy behind it. And we're happy to see where this is going, because we're already we have 7 slots available to us at Psychedelic Science in Denver, which is huge, because more than 1,000 people applied to be speakers there. And so I
didn't get in.
Yeah,
but I'm glad that you did. I applied and was told no, and I was so glad to hear that you got in. That's amazing.
Yeah, we're happy. And so we got a cohort that's preparing for that, of veterans to go and tell their stories. And then we are going to be going to Boston in September for a show in October. And we're looking at location in Memphis for later on in the year. And we're trying to build these out. And this is just for the cohort that you and I just spoke about, which is called Foundations of Elite Storytelling Tactics. Well, we have follow-on programs to go through. One is TED preparation training. We have sales and pitching preparation. And then we also have corporate speaking. So preparing folks for 90-minute plus to multi-day keynotes with breakout rooms and that. And then we are going to build a speakers bureau after that. So we've been through all those training blocks. And it's a place where people can go to hire veteran speakers and they know that they've been trained. They know that they've been vetted. They're going to have their speaker reels. In order to get in the bureau, you're going to have, just a lot of iterations on stage in front of many folks. So people know what they're getting into. But Warrior Side is going to be a vetted and trusted place for conscious speakers to be found for any event. And we're very, very excited about that as well. So a lot of big things coming.
You're right. You are not thinking and dreaming small. This is so incredible. And these are all veterans and first responders.
Yeah.
We all have stories.
And the big thing is, I'm pretty sure by the end of next year, we're going to be in conversation with Netflix for just a show, because I think when people see the depth and the power of just a single one of these stories, and know that we have a lineup of all this life experience coming to the table, and including, for example, like Vietnam vets, these live stories are not always going to be here. And so to make sure that we're remembering and locking in some of these things is very, very important for a lot of reasons. For a lot of reasons, it's a hell of a thing to be a veteran and being put in places with the idea that you were there for a reason, and finding out there's a whole other reason why you were there, and all of that stuff. It's important to not forget what it means when people vote for us to go to war.
Do you find that by telling your story that it allows some freedom in your own life to be able to let go? I ask because I know a lot of Vietnam vets, my dad included, never talked about it. I don't know anything about that experience. But I also know that I went to the Persian Gulf and I don't really talk about it.
Yeah. I think it has the opportunity to let go, and it also has the opportunity to confine by telling this story again, if it's told from a place of fear and lack and all of the things. So that's what I mean. It's very important to us to take great care in the stories that are being told, because yes, some storytelling can be done in such a way where it is a process, continuing little by little, letting go, and getting stronger and stronger and stronger. And it's probably easier for the opposite to be true. Of every time you tell the story, it gets smaller and smaller and smaller, but it's not less. It's like more.
Or you don't even tell the story. Like I've never heard a story from my dad.
Yeah.
We never watched a war movie. Growing up, my dad has never participated in any of those kind of things. I think I've seen his uniform once. Yeah. So as we were talking about this, I'm thinking about that because I feel like there are certain Vietnam vets who have seen some stuff. Well, like a lot of us vets and first responders who choose to isolate or to not even talk about it.
And that is the connection that we're looking for, and not connection for connection's sake, but connecting for real purpose. Because as far as I can tell, what is true is when the deeper truth is uncovered through looking at this, it's not hard at all to discuss. It's not, because it's like asking a millionaire how they became a millionaire. Oh, well, let me tell you. I'd be happy to tell you. Here's all the tricks.
Right.
And you ask a conscious person, hey, how did you become conscious? I don't know.
Yeah.
They're happy to tell you, and it's, hey, what is it like being a war veteran? And if it's still all twisted and broken and messy and things in there, they're not going to want to talk about it, of course. But if that process was the catalyst to allowing them to become this freer expression of themselves, let me tell you what it was like to be in Vietnam. There's no resistance. There's no shadows anymore in the closet. They don't have room to hide anywhere.
Yeah, I went to, you and I talked about this. I went to a Navy SEAL version of Things for Entrepreneurs. And it was like a 3-day hell week, like no sleep. We go through the same telephone pole over 3. And there was an exercise, and you're with these guys for like 15 weeks in a lead up, and they're asking really exposing tough questions. That's when I was beginning to just learn how to share my story of abuse. And I remember sitting out in an open field with guys that I had learned to trust. And we got to pick one person to ask a question. And I had one person ask me, what took you so long to tell my story? That it happened to him too. And what I have learned in these last couple of years since I've been able to tell my stories happened to so many other men. I've had so many other men who said it's happened to me. And by you allowing freedom to be able to share that story, it is allowing me the opportunity to tell you this. I never saw the impact of a story of having that connection and healing. And I think that's why, Diego, I was drawn to this, why I'm so passionate about what you're doing, because I've had grown men in their 70s that I've never told anyone. I'm like, wait a minute, like, why me? Like, you gave me permission.
Thanks for doing what you do, man. It's a big deal.
It's doing me.
Yep.
It's, I think we're at this place, you and I, because I see it. When you, and you can call it waking up or whatever, you want to go back and help the others heal consciously or subconsciously. That's just because you know what it feels like. And I feel like that's where I'm at in my journey. I just want people to be able to tell their and to be okay with whatever it is. I think back to, again, reframing the third time in the room and him apologizing to me. It allowed me the opportunity to see it differently. I was no longer a victim because it had happened to him. And I got to call him 6 weeks after I came to terms with it, and I forgave him. And he died in October of last year. My mother had called and said, I thought you would want to know. And I got off the phone and I started crying, not because it had happened, but because I didn't know that he got an opportunity to forgive his abuse. And that's where I knew that the things had shifted for me.
It's not little stuff. You said a word there that is important, is wanting to show other people that what's possible. And it's true. You and I are choosing to flash our flashlights in this direction. And at the same time, the farther and farther and farther I go in this path of whether you want to call it waking or whatever, the less and less wanting there is. It's just, this is here. And I think it's important for me to mention for me right now. Well, one of the most powerful lessons I learned in medicine, because I was kind of always involved in medicine somehow. I was a paramedic. I was a medic in the teams. I was medical with the Marines. And now as a psychedelic integration coach sitting with people in their deepest, darkest, one of the most powerful lessons I learned earlier on that I was grateful to have, and this is way beyond any type of awareness about anything, was that you can't save everybody. I can know all the chest tubes and the crikes and all the things. And some people, they just are as they are, and it is what it is. And I'm very, very grateful for that lesson, because this would be a very hard industry to be in if I felt the need to save as many people as I possibly could. Because even that is a form of attachment and suffering, which on a lower vibrational state, it's like, what's the big deal? With a higher and higher and higher vibrational state, the suffering gets exponential for like what would have otherwise been negligible. Wouldn't even have noticed that. Now it's like huge suffering, the attachment that whoever I'm dealing with needs to heal somehow. They need to get better. They need to get stronger, or I'm not doing something right or something. And so it's just a gas station. I'm just a gas station. If you need gas, we're here. If you don't, there's probably another one 30 miles away from us, whatever it is. And if I happen not to touch or connect with you in any way, shape, or form, cool. Yeah, no big deal at all. And yeah, I mentioned that because it's people in the healing spaces. I don't get the sense that that's a general understanding, that they're like falling on the sword to make sure that they are powerfully serving humanity. It's like, whoa, dude.
Yeah, because I've seen that almost a savior complex
for all their reasons.
Yeah, without even realizing, because I've watched the epiphany in some of them that have like, holy crap, like where did that go? Like, how did I get off on that exit off the expressway without even realizing? But yeah, I mean, it could easily happen if you're not aware.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so in other words, not needing to show up to the world in any way, and just being. That's it. I don't need to be the one who is doing this. Just being.
How many do we have on Saturday night? How many are going to be playing this?
We need 300 people to show up.
Okay.
Let's go.
I think I told you I posted this all over my social. We're going to launch this thing today. Listeners, you're in the San Diego area or you're in driving distance from wherever, you got to show up. This is going to be an amazing event. How many have gone through the cohort that are going to be there to tell their stories?
There were 8 that went through the cohort, and there are going to be 5 on stage.
And how much time do each of them have?
They have anywhere from 10 and 15 minutes. I'm also going to go on stage just because this is our first show. I want to get all the footage and media and all that stuff out of the way. But the plan is to not need to be on stage at all after this anymore. So they can always just keep showcasing their situation. So,
Love it.
And if you're a veteran or first responder and you need help with the tickets, please reach out. We have some donations that I'll be happy to send your way. For sure. It's more important that you're there than wrestling around with pricing and things.
So warriorside.org. I will post that in social. I actually have it on all of my feed, and then I will post it again on all of my feed as well over the next couple of days, and then over the next week as we promote this. Again, I know you and I saw this a couple weeks ago, and my heart just like, this is it. Like, I'm so passionate about this. And I know I've been trying to figure out, like, for me, starting a new business, how can I support causes? I said that when I started this thing, veterans were clearly the most important thing for me. And I've been looking for 3, and I'm super excited that we found each other so I can support you as I grow.
Really appreciate you. And this is only getting bigger. There's so much energy behind this. It's crazy. And I started an organization before. I started the Trident approach and executive, athlete, mental health, clinician coaching, sharing the best of what we learn in the SEAL teams, combined with our deepest insights from psychedelic medicine use. And there is an energy that exists with that. And people are like, well, that's cool. Like, that's super cool. I want to know. But the energy that's behind Warrior Side is it's love essence. It's just love. It's not, how do I do? It's none of that. It is like a gas station. It's like, cool, brother, come on in.
Oh my God, I love it.
It's amazing energy that is attached to the support that's behind this. People are coming out of the woodworks and just, how do I help? Like, what do you need? Grateful. And it's emotional too. So this is the best.
So September 29th, House of Blues, San Diego.
March 29th.
What did I say? Oh my God. So I don't even know what day I'm in. March 29th. I was just looking at this too. I'm like, I can't believe it's already the end of March. Like, so March 29th, House of Blues.
San Diego.
I have posted
Dinner
this all over my...
Starts at 6.
Starts at 6.
Yeah. Come out for dinner. Hang out with the storytellers.
If you're in the area, come out for dinner and meet Diego and Warrior Side. This is an incredible organization. I will post all of the information in my show notes. Again, we'll be posting all of this over the next 7 days to get ready for this. Then we'll double post it over the Thursday, Friday, Saturday to make sure that we can go there.
Thank you.
Diego, thank you so much for joining. Appreciate you, brother.
Appreciate you. Thank you, Alan.
This is Alan Wiederhold, and this is Neuma.